Welcome to Rise and Relate with Rissa. And on today's episode, I'm going to be discussing elitism, classism, gender and race discrimination, and how it relates to social worker in and outside the field, and how that ties into us as Black people engaging in elitism and classism and gender and race discrimination. Now, before I even jump into the stories that I would like to highlight today, I want to first just go over what they mean. What is elitism? What is classism? What is gender and race discrimination? So elitism is the belief in being superior of certain individuals or groups based on perceived qualities such as wealth, education, or social status. So what that looks like in the context of Black people is we have wealthy Black people and then we have poor Black people. And wealthy Black people favor other wealthy Black people as far as understanding their privilege, understanding the things that make them successful, and then discriminate on people that are less than them, less educated, less affluent, and less accomplished. So that can manifest in various ways, such as just being exclusatory with their behaviors, being dismissive or judgmental based on the socioeconomic status or educational background of other lower class Black people. Classism is similar as in the context that classism can happen within elitism, because classism is the prejudice against or in favor of people belonging to a particular social class, focusing only on socioeconomics. So whereas elitism is a little more broad in the context of how someone can discriminate, classism is focused on that socioeconomic class of people and discriminating based off money and stature. So I want to first talk about Dr. Deborah Mae Jackson. Dr. Deborah Mae Jackson was a vice president at Jackson State University in Mississippi. And on November 17, 2023, she decided to file a complaint with the Southern District of the U.S. Federal Court in the District of Mississippi for gender and race discrimination. Of course, she is a Black woman, and she was going after the role of being president of Jackson State University. So, as I was saying, as far as gender and race and elitism and classism, what is a really big conceived notion is that elitism and classism can't occur in a HBCU. It's a university filled with nothing but PhDs, doctorate level Black people that have a certain level of status, of wealth, of class, and everyone just has so much pride when it comes to their HBCU and where they attended. And a lot of people are afraid to ever misstep or talk negative about their HBCU because, of course, these things can't happen at an HBCU because this is an institution that is meant for us, by us, right? But it actually happens all the time. And I want to break it down and how it happens and what that looks like with actual cases that have occurred within the last year that we should definitely be bringing more attention to. So those that is in the HBCU, don't tussle with me, okay? Because I know how y'all feel when y'all say, PB, how, what, whatever. Don't tussle with me, okay? Because the facts are still the facts. So anywho, back to Dr. Deborah Mae Jackson. So she filed that complaint on November 17th, and it was because she was overlooked as the candidate to be president of Jackson State University. So at first, when this initially happened, there was no media coverage. There was not much talk about it until recently in January, where she was actually proven correct on her claims that the board continuously, so not just overlooking her, but continuously overlooked candidates that had far more experience, had far more education, and at the time when she applied, they end up picking Thomas Hudson to be the president, which is a Black male, to be the president of JSU. But after her going through this intensive investigation, they had found that the board constantly picked candidates that was weaker candidates, less experienced, because they knew that they can manipulate and control those people in those positions, and that when they wanted things to be passed, that they would be biased because they knew they were giving opportunities to candidates that were not per se deserving of being president of such a prestigious HBCU. So these subservients, they just knew that they were going to listen to anything that they needed, the changes that they needed without too much pushback. And what is interesting about this case is this happens all the time, because in the Black community, we sometimes have a phenomenon about working so hard, right? If we work really hard, we get that promotion. If we work really hard, we will be successful. We work really hard, our companies will be loyal to us. Our institutions will be loyal to us. And it's actually the direct opposite. When it comes to joining organizations, when it comes to getting certain positions and promotions, it's very much dependent on the leadership and the executive staff knowing that they can control you, per se. They know that, hey, we are going to pick the lesser of the two candidates because we know that we can assert authority. We know that we have more power than them. We know that they won't fight back. So in reality, they know they're picking someone that will essentially always be on their side instead of picking the right candidate that's going to always choose the right side, whether that right side is the board of the trustees side or the side of the students, the side of the parents, the side of themselves, of the colleagues, whoever, the side of the people. Instead, they want the one that's going to tote the line straight and narrow and listen to those opinions when it comes to voting and go in favor towards what the agenda is of that university. So that is really unfortunate, but she was able to prove through multiple candidates that were selected that they did not hold up to the criteria or even the status of being the president of the university. Another case that happened that showed complete discrimination, gender and race, unfortunately, was Dr. Annette Kadeen Bailey at Lincoln University, another HBCU. And for those that has followed the story, and I know it's still under investigation, but Dr. Bailey went to her president, John Mosley, on several occasions because of discrimination, because of harassment. She went to HR. She reached out. She said she was being harassed. She said she was being bullied. And when she brought these issues to her higher-ups, to her administrative, she was placed on a poor performance review. Anyone that works in corporate or just works in the field, I mean, even in the field of social work, the moment your job puts you on a poor performance review when you have been excelling, whether that is, getting awards, meeting productivity, just doing well, getting accolades within your field, the moment they put you on a poor performance review, that is a sign that they need to get you out of the door the legal way by coming up with how you're not performing. And Dr. Bailey, her friends that talks about her personality and just how she lights up when she walks in a room, just how she knows how to sense what her friends need, what people need in general, just knowing the greatness this woman brought. And when she started this position and these things started to happen, how she just fell into a deep depression that led to her committing suicide, which is a really unfortunate event. But a couple of weeks ago, I talked about racial trauma and what that does to a person psychologically, emotionally. And Dr. Bailey is a great example of that when you work in academia and you work within institutions. And mind you, John Mosley is a white president of HBCU, which how? That's a whole nother story. How is he the president of an HBCU? When we talk about representation matters, right? But in regards to elitism, classism, Dr. Bailey reached out to her board of trustees to say, hey, I need some help here. I'm suffering here. I'm going through these things. Mind you, the board is compromised. Out of 8 of those people, 5 of them are Black. And the board told her, hey, we don't engage in personal issues, which is really unfortunate because when you look at the context of their goal and their objective, the things that she was dealing with was absolutely within their willpower to address. But this is what happens when you get people that look like you in higher positions, right? They then believe they're part of this elite class of people, where then when things like this happen to Black women, they look at it and they discriminate just as a white person would discriminate against a Black woman. So they assimilate to the dominant group. And then they start to believe that they have all of this power to the point that issues that she brought to them, they will dismiss, minimize, undermine, and not take seriously. And this had to be serious for someone to be willing to take their life behind it because of the mental stress and damage that comes when you are in these environments trying to get through. And Dr. Bailey actually said those words exactly. I'm just trying to make it through. And this reminds me of a situation that I have experienced within the field of social work, within the institutional level. So recently, I was in a class that was facilitated by a Black woman. And in that class, we were just talking about leadership. We were talking about classroom dynamics. We were talking about, advancements in the social work field as far as, cutting edge research. We were just, just talking about where we're going in the field of social work. And this woman that's facilitating this course is talking about, like, man, you guys are on the cutting edge of research. Like, you guys get the benefit from it. And I made the comment and I said, well, no, actually, we don't get the benefit from it because we, as the consumers, still have to undergo racial trauma, discrimination, oppression by not only the dominant group, but also by people that look like us. And mind you, this woman is an African-American woman. She's a Black woman. She cuts me off in the middle of this course, like starts screaming at me, telling me I need to be quiet, that she's not about to do this, as if like she was triggered by my honest response. So because of this response, and this was a virtual course, so I was just in the course, I muted my camera, and then I went on to reach out to the people that was over the course. Like, hey, this is who you guys have facilitating the course, that we're talking about racism, we're talking about teaching, we're talking about training, we're talking about all these things that she's not even implementing within this course. I reached out to them, and mind you, I interacted with 3 other. One was a Caribbean Black woman, another one was a Black man, and another one was a Black woman. And all of them treated me as if I was delusional, as if I was crazy. No one acknowledged the behavior of the facilitator. No one acknowledged it. And not one of my emails, nobody said, hey, I'm sorry that you're going through that. And mind you, this course is not just a one-off course. Like you come back and you take this course. So I have to go back the next week because, hey, I've already paid my money for it. And in order for you to even get the credit for the course and finish up the course successfully, you have to engage in the dialogue. And I was just like, my body couldn't allow me to do it. I was frozen. I was stressed out. I had a lot of anxiety. I was very fearful to speak up again because I was like, why did that happen to me? Me and this course facilitator didn't have any issues. We wasn't talking about anything negative. So I'm like, what did I do that triggered them, right? But it's that power that they have that sometimes, even as a Black woman, as myself, I consider myself as somebody that's very dominated. That's very dominant. I'm very opinionated. And sometimes I can intimidate other Black women and Black men just by my presence, just like I do when I go into a room full of white people. And in those cases, I've noticed that Black people that have more power will purposely try to create this distance in between us so that I never feel comfortable enough to be like, go to them as a mentor or go to them for help just because we are the same race. So we have this woman, this course facilitator that I have this issue with, that don't address me, doesn't apologize, doesn't do anything, just disrespects me, guards me, and then I go to her higher ups and they treat me as if like I'm a nobody. Like my experience, the damage that was caused was insignificance, and it just really threw me. It really threw me because here I am in this course trying to learn, trying to advance in the field of social work, and this is what I'm faced with. And I'm like, if I can't get social justice within this course, how can I have social justice by utilizing or applying the things that I'm learning? So, like I said, we have this preconceived notion sometimes that because somebody looks like us, there's no way that they can be racist, prejudiced, engaged in systematic things like classism and elitism or gender and race discrimination, but they do. And this same woman that I'm referring to, this facilitator, someone had brought up the same exact point that I made, but they were a white male and 2 white women. And guess what? She smiled, she laughed, she agreed. She didn't cut them off. She didn't disrespect them. She let them talk freely. And that right there is a great example of gender and race discrimination. So in this field of social work, how it shows up as far as gender discrimination can be unequal opportunities. So Black female social workers may face fewer opportunities for advancement compared to like the male counterparts or the white colleagues, despite having similar qualifications and experience. So in the case of Dr. Deborah May Jackson, that's exactly what happened. They looked at her experience, they looked at her education history, and it far succeeded Thomas Hudson, but she wasn't selected. And again, when we are navigating a lot of these different institutions, agencies, workplace environments, we might not know that this is actually happening because sometimes it can be very subtle. And sometimes it might not even be outright. It might not be overtly happening to you. So you're like, oh, I just didn't get the job because I wasn't good. I didn't get the job because I didn't meet the standard. I didn't get the job because they were better. But not understanding that you were actually qualified the whole entire time. And now you're leaving this position with lower self-esteem, with less confidence, with less ambitions, and ambitious to leave the job or to even go for another job because you think you are not good enough when that is not true. It's you fighting against systematic barriers. Another thing is Black women in social work may encounter barriers preventing them from reaching higher level positions within an organization. So they might find themselves stuck in lower roles with limited opportunities for advancement, which in the social work field, statistically, Black women are found to be working in the most hostile and misfit conditions out of any race there is when it comes to working in the social work field. So we are more likely to off back get jobs that requires us to work in conditions that mentally take everything from us, mentally and physically. And we are stuck in those cycles where we get Stockholm syndrome. We get stuck in those cycles where we're unable to advance because now we no longer have the mental bandwidth or capacity. Then we have people that look like us in higher up positions with the position to bring you up but won't bring you up because of classism, elitism, and discrimination that then they do to you because of assimilation and internalized racism. Pay disparities. Black women are the most underpaid women in the field of social work, and I'm sure in many other fields across the different career paths. I am the first one. I used to run courses on teaching women how to negotiate for higher pay. When I go to an interview, the first thing I say is, what's the salary? Because I'm not even engaging in a 15-minute interview, 30-minute interview, hour interview without knowing what the salary is. So I'm going to negotiate at all corners because I refuse to be paid less than what I deserve. And because as Black women, we can be so grateful for opportunities. We can be so grateful to get it out the mud. We could be so grateful to have certain opportunities that we take whatever crumbs they give us and we run with them without realizing that, hey, Sarah that's sitting next to you is getting paid 3 times more than what you're getting paid. And because you didn't negotiate, they gave you the lowest of the range, the pay range, because that's what you accepted on the first time they offer you your salary. Black women may face stereotypes and biases that undermine their professional abilities and leadership potential. These biases can reflect like within the performance evaluations, promotion decisions, and overall career advancement. So again, you can see gender and race discrimination within just your performance. And if you are a Black social worker out there, I would like to personally tell you, make sure you go on a journey and you know yourself through and through. And what that means is you understand who you are, what talents you do and you do not possess, so that no one else dictates and give their subjective opinion and you waver based on somebody's feedback that is rooted in racism and bias. So when it comes to the performance evaluations, when you know you've done great, you know you've done great. It doesn't matter what that piece of paper say. Now, if you know yourself to be a slacker, to finesse the system, to not do your documentation, to like slack off, then you know that you are deserving of whatever that review is. But if you know that you are excellent when it comes to turning your documentation in 24 hours, following up with patients that are discharged from the hospital, meeting with all of your clients, doing the interventions, doing your session, and you're doing everything ethical and morally correct, then do not let other people waver you from that. Black women may also have limited access to mentors or sponsors who can help them guide their career or advocate for their advancement within an organization, which is so true. So women in general are discriminated against for sponsors or mentors across so many fields, but directly within the social work field. And just like I said, there's a huge gap between Black women in social work that are at the highest level of social work and the Black women that are at the lowest level doing very direct client to client care. And there's a huge gap in between that. And the Black people that are at the top, they believe they're elite. They believe they're in a different class. So they treat the ones at the bottom so much differently than the ones that are right next to them, right? And I've seen this because I remember the day when I said, I want to create a program that bridges that gap. Because I realized in the field of social work, I didn't have Black supervisors and superiors that will promote unhealthy self-care, will promote overworking, will promote discrimination, will promote microaggressions, will promote these behaviors all because they endure it, they've accepted it, and they're okay taking on the white ideology and passing it down to other people and creating harm to the people that they are supposed to be helping. And then, of course, like I said earlier, Black women are more likely to be in hostile work environments, dealing with harassment, microaggressions, and exclusatory practices that creates additional barriers and creates alienation and isolation within institutions and workplace, which, as you see, has happened with Dr. Bailey and has happened with Dr. Mae Jackson, which is just a really unfortunate situation. And I just want to end today with just another example of elitism and classism in social work and how it illuminates like how discrimination, how it occurs in real life, in real time. This is a real thing. So in a community-based social work organization, there's a team of social workers responsible for providing support services to low-income families and disadvantaged neighborhoods. The organization receives funding from various sources, including government, grants, and private donations. The organization leadership predominantly consists of individuals from privileged backgrounds who have little understanding of the challenges faced by families they serve. They hold the belief that solutions to poverty are straightforward and can be implemented with minimum resources. So during the meeting to discuss program development, the leadership proposes a new initiative aimed at addressing food insecurity in the community. However, the proposed solution involves implementing a high-cost gourmet cooking class aimed at teaching low-income families how to prepare nutritious meals using expensive ingredients, right? The leadership argues that this approach will empower families to make healthier food choices, break the cycle of poverty through education. However, the social workers on the ground, us little people, express concerns about the feasibility of the initiative, highlighting that many families lack access to just basic kitchen facilities, cannot afford expensive ingredients, and prioritizing just meeting their basic needs, such as paying their rent, utilities, over attending a gourmet cooking class. Despite these concerns, the leadership dismisses the feedback they received from the social workers, insisting that their approach is superior and that the families simply need to prioritize better, right? So we put the blame on now the low-income families instead of the system. And this is how this is shown. The attitude reflects elitism and classism because the leadership privilege perspective blinds them to the realities of poverty, and it undermines the expertise of the social workers who have direct experience working in the community. So within this example, elitism and classism result in the imposition of solutions that are just disconnected from the lived experience of the families being served and is continuing the inequalities rather than addressing them. So what happens is their mindset is two completely different mindsets because they're in two different tax brackets, two different realities, and they think that solution is the solution. And hey, it's a them thing instead of it's a system thing that needs to be addressed. So this happens all the time, and it's important to talk about this because if we're not aware that this is happening within our jobs, our institution, within our communities, then we don't know how and where to start to even address these matters. We then, as those people, so if you are a Black social worker in a higher up position, if you are just a Black person in general with an executive position, if you don't realize that you are participating in this behavior, then you are part of the problem and you are doing harm. So I hope after today's episode, you are able to realize what that looks like, what it sounds like, and what it does to the people beneath you and how much it impacts them, and choose to do something different the next time you are that only Black person in a meeting with the power, with the privilege, with the status to actually make the right decision and not continue on racist and oppressive practices that continuously marginalize this group of people. Thank you, and I hope to see you guys. Well, I hope you guys get to listen to me next week.